Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Catholics Live in Discipleship. I'm your host, Darren Nelson. I'm excited about today's conversation because we're going to be talking about something along the lines of communication, but maybe in a different light, something you may not have thought about. So let me ask you, as a parish leader, when it comes to thinking about improving your parish communications, do you think about parish identity? Now, this probably doesn't come to the top of your mind when you're thinking about how to improve communications, but I think it's foundational. And in today's conversation, we speak with Tracy Welliver, who is the Senior Director at Liturgical Publications. Now, Tracy's been helping parishes create more effective communication strategies for many years. And we talk about this parish identity and why it's important. You're going to walk away with three key things from this conversation. The first is, what are some key characteristics that help us make up our parish identity? The second is, why would a parish leadership team even want to start to have this type of conversation and talk about parish identity? And then three is, simply, how do you begin this dialogue around your conversation about parish identity? So let's dive into the conversation and let's learn about the ways in which we can help our parish be transformed by this conversation to help our parish connect and grow stronger in the mission. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Catholics Live in Discipleship. Today, we have Tracy Welliver from LPI who's going to be talking with us. And so, Tracy, I just want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I believe we have a great topic to be talking about. But first of all, just welcome to the podcast and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Darren. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've known each other for a while. I mean, I can't even remember, maybe 2014, I think, back at one of the ICS conferences, and then we would just continue to communicate, connect, see each other at different conferences. So I've always admired what you had to say and consider you a great Catholic leader in in the church for us. And I reached out to you because I was reading a great article on LPI's website on branding. And I always struggle with my G's. I'm from New England. People know that.
I don't know anybody named Brandon, so.
But something that, is not a common conversation for pastors and leadership. And I said, I got to reach out to Tracy and see if we can't maybe encourage pastors and leaders to have that conversation, especially when they're trying to encourage effective communication. And really, I think it helps move the parish to become more mission focused.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But why is, I guess what I'll do is I'll open with this question: branding and parish identity. Why should that be an important conversation for pastors and key leaders?
Well, let's talk about parish identity and what do we mean by that? What do we mean by a parish that has certain characteristics, certain charisms? People are drawn to environments, they're drawn to different types of people, and it can be for any number of reasons. And, one of the interesting thing is we sometimes think that, we're all the same. And to a certain extent, being Catholic, there's universality there. There's a universality of worship, universality of experience. One of the great things I remember growing up as a Catholic was, always thinking and being told in my Catholic school religion classes, hey, you could go to any church and you can understand the liturgy, you can participate. Yet at the same time, each worship space the people in that worship space, the ministries that are exercised by the people in that worship space make up, the identity of who they are. And, I think about four areas that kind of lead into identity. One is the actual setting or architecture in and of itself of a parish. The second is the liturgical experience. The third is the makeup of the people and who they are. And then the fourth is the ministries and outreach that community exercises. And I think it's probably the last couple of decades real trendy to always say, hey, the church is the people, it's not the building. And that is 100% true, right? I mean, I think we would both agree, our listeners would agree, the parish is the people.
Yeah.
At the same time, I remember being a young college student in the summers. I worked at a child development center, and it was a center run by a group that was an ecumenical group. So there were Catholics, there were Methodists, Episcopalians, and so on and so forth. And the center was housed in a United Methodist Church, right, in some of their buildings there. And when the kids, because we were little kids, when they would go down for nap time, I would say rosary. Now, I didn't say rosary in the nap room. I could have, right? I could have just said it silently. I could have said rosary outside. I could have communed with God and nature. But every day I went into the Methodist church, into the sanctuary there that they had, and I prayed the rosary. Probably the only time a Catholic ever prayed the rosary in that Methodist church, right? But the setting, the environment, although not Catholic, was more conducive to me saying the rosary, right?
Yeah.
It spoke to me, it calmed me, it centered me. We can never take our environment, our worship space, our even the buildings in which we house faith formation or religious education classes, or we have parish socials. We can never take that space for granted because it speaks to us. It either excites us, it soothes us, it tells us something about what is there, right? Or what we should expect. Even just like, going to a restaurant, right? You go to one restaurant, the food is great. You go to the second restaurant, the food's okay, but the environment is spectacular. And oftentimes people will go back to the second restaurant. Because if the first restaurant, like, food is great, but man, the chairs weren't great. I mean, just seemed like so blah, the service was bad. So, that's one, right? Two is our experience of the liturgy. And we're very fortunate as Catholics in that, yes, there is a common liturgical spirit experience. But how that is played out in the space with the people can be very different. And, decades ago, and in some places, the faithful kind of restrained to parish boundaries. But I'm sure you see in your work that's not the case anymore, right? I mean, people go to different communities, and sometimes they have really poor reasons for going. Maybe it's about one personality, one person, right? That's not why we go. But you step sometimes into a church and you feel something. The liturgy hasn't even happened yet. You feel something. And that's not the same for everybody, right? I mean, certain environments speak differently to different people. So then our experience of the liturgy, our experience of the music, our experience of the setting, the experience of sitting in a pew, the experience of kneeling on a kneeler, the experience of, how communion is distributed. I mean, all of these things play into the experience and what that community is all about, right? You can say, oh, it's going to be very similar again, but it's not always the same. I mean, take for instance music, right? I mean, you don't want to necessarily choose places because of music, but if you were to say, we want to have this type of music ministry in our church, maybe you can have it. And why can't you have it? Because you don't have the mix of instrumentalists and musicians that another church has.
Mm-hmm.
So you use the gifts that you've been given, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you create something that matches what you have. And then,
Yeah.
so then that's the third component is the people, right? Because every church should have a diversity of some sort, and every church is made up of people from different backgrounds, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it be cultural, whether it be just their experiences. I mean, I live here in the South in Greensboro, North Carolina. Oftentimes, the experience in some of our churches are a whole bunch of Northerners that moved here, right? So if you're thinking you're going to have a Southern experience, you're going to be severely disappointed because in some of the churches, there aren't hardly any Southerners, right?
Yeah.
So there are
They
all
moved north.
yeah, that's right. So, but when we're thinking about identity, who do we have? What is the makeup? I mean, we talk about ourselves as the body of Christ, right? And the body of Christ is made up of many parts. And a hand can't be a foot, and a foot can't be an eye. And not only is that the same in the larger universal body of Christ, it's the same and also in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does our reflection of that body look like? Because not every foot is a hand, but not every foot is the same as the next foot. Some feet are different. I mean, I don't know about you, Darren. What size foot you have? What size shoe do you wear?
I wear 8.5.
Oh, see, so I wear a 10. My poor son, he wears like an 8. And he's like,
Yeah.
sometimes he wears a 7.5, and he's like, my foot's so small.
Yeah, my oldest son, he wears a 12.
There you go, right? So we
Like,
all
how'd
have,
that happen?
but they're not all the same feet.
Right.
Makeup of that body is a reflection of that community, and they can't be something that they're not. And then, of course, that then leads into the fourth one, which is ministries, because think about there are churches that are very social justice oriented. There are churches that are very oriented towards Marian devotion. Oftentimes, the patron of the church, Our Lady of Grace. It's so interesting. So oftentimes you find like Our Lady of Grace or Our Lady of Fatima, those parishes, um, the idea that their patron is Our Lady and a particular reflection of Our Lady can oftentimes play a huge role in the experience of being in that church, right? I mean, there is a distinct reality that occurs. Let's put it this way. There's a greater chance if you go to a parish that's called Our Lady of Fatima, there's a much greater chance you'll hear the Fatima prayer at some point in time than you will another church. Doesn't mean that they're doing something right, another church is doing something wrong, but it's the charism of who they are. And so then that leads into the ministries, whether, if you wanted to be a parish and you wanted to say, oh, every parish should have a very strong ministry in these like 5 to 10 areas. That's not going to happen because you just don't always have the people to do that.
Yeah.
So when you are a leader of a parish community, it behooves you. You're going to help shape that. But what do you have naturally there, whether it be in your environment, in your liturgical experience, in your makeup of people, or most definitely, in the ministries that are there and ministries that maybe aren't there that can be added because you have the people with those gifts and talents, those charisms, those characteristics that can lead to that.
Yeah. It's so great how you set that up, Tracy, because even myself, I work with many pastors, many leaders, this whole parish identity conversation, I'll humbly say this, don't have it, don't have it, period, and should be having it. And here's why I say should. And I know some people say you should never use the word should, but the way that you just walked us through those four things, for identifiers, here's what happened when you did that. I was thinking about the environment in a couple of parishes that I attend and why they're important to me. I was thinking about the liturgy at these parishes and what I like, about them and how they impact my life. I was thinking about the people at different parishes that I work with and attend, and how they impact, and the ministries that they have, and how there are different ministries at different parishes. And that right there just helped me begin to say, or put together, wow, that's that parish's identity. That, and one of the things, my personal stories I was thinking about is my I found out I was doing a workshop in New York City, June 11th, 2 years ago, and as I was driving in, I got a phone call, and my dad passed away with a heart attack. And so I turned around and I started driving home. And for me, it's a good hour and 20 minutes. And I passed by a number of churches. But I said to myself, I want to go here. I want to sit here. Um, Partly because I'll say it, the environment. I knew it was going to be quiet, the setting. I could see the tabernacle. It was the environment that attracted me. And I sat there, and I just sat there with the Lord, prayed for my dad. And that really, I, you know, it felt, every parish I go into, honestly, when I sit in front of the Lord, I feel like I'm at home, right?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
those four that you just gave us, that's setting that up that way. It's just fantastic, you
Well,
know?
I wouldn't want any of our listeners to think that it means you have to have a large, spectacular church.
Correct.
You have to have, this over-the-top liturgical experience or anything like
Mhm.
that, because even in the simplest of spaces, there is all of these things that um, speak to people. So another example from when I was a young person. Can you hear my dogs?
No,
Okay, good.
no, just
I
ask them to
can.
bark louder, though.
Okay. So um, we would oftentimes on the weekends go to the Poor Clares Monastery that was in Northern Virginia, and sometimes we'd say the Rosary or we'd go to Mass there. Now, in that experience, right, the Poor Clares are behind a screen. So you don't really see them except for like one or two that are designated that can be with the public. And the space that you are in was very small, very ordinary, but just the way, I mean, I remember there were a couple things on the walls. The light was dimmed, right? And it just provided such an atmosphere for that experience of prayer or liturgy that you're like, okay, I get it, right? And you were literally like, if this could be a parish, I would take this as a parish, right? This is just so cool, this experience. And it has all of those. It has the actual space, it has the experience of liturgy, the people who you can't even see, but you hear them. You hear them and you hear them reciting prayer and sometimes singing, and it is beautiful, right? It's just so beautiful. No instruments. And you then, what is the ministry? The ministry is what they're ministering to us, right? It's their ministry to us. I mean, that's a spectacular experience in my life that has always reminded me you don't need you don't need a choir of 50 people. You don't need 10 instrumentalists. You don't need the greatest homilist that has ever been heard. You don't need all of those things, but if you put it together just right, it spoke to me. It might not have spoken to everybody else, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a charismatic Catholic might have been like, this is not what I'm looking for. It's so quiet. It's so, I'm looking for, rousing worship. Maybe it's another experience. But for me at that time, I mean, it definitely spoke to me. And there was clearly not a parish, but an identity there, right? An identity that I connected with.
Yeah, what you're making me think about, and I think this is what you're encouraging the viewers and listeners to think about when it comes to our own faith journey, and we want to encourage witness at the parish level. How well are you able to articulate how the gospel message is impacting your life, right? What I'm hearing and what you're making me think about is how well do we as key leaders, how well are we able to articulate the impact that the environment has, the liturgy has, the people? I think it's like I'm just thinking about this, and I'd love to hear from some of the listeners and viewers what your comments would be about this. I think we almost just take it for granted and we don't really articulate what we're experiencing. We're just taking it for granted that people are going to know it.
Right.
And I think if maybe later on when we get to talking about Brandon and why that's important, you probably will bring some of that out. But I'm just thinking we really might not be doing a good enough job with articulating that.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that it's twofold, right? What you said, we take things for granted. Um, we take for granted that people will know who they are and who we are. We're going to take for granted that they have had an experience of Christ that they can communicate to others. And a lot of times we assume that because I have had that experience, so you must have too, but may not may not be the case at all, right?
Right.
And then the second thing is the the understanding that we can use whatever God has given to create that experience or that identity. We can be who God called us to be. We don't have to be someone else. So it's interesting. I mean, like you, over the years, done a lot of consulting with parishes, and I remember working with one parish, and it was like right off the bat, the very first meeting. I think we were doing like long range planning and things like that, and the pastor was like, you know, we'll leave out the names so as to not bring the innocent into this. But here at Parish A, we have this, but everybody in this area knows Parish B. I mean, it's hard. We have people who leave for Parish B. They're always going over to Parish B. And I mean, I want to know what we can do to be more like Parish B. So completely wrong question. Maybe a great observation, but wrong question.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how can we be more like Parish A and celebrate that. Because what's happening there is you have a parish in Parish B that has identified who they are. They know their strengths. They play upon them. They are known all throughout the community, Catholic and non-Catholic alike, because they have embraced and are brazen about who they are. Parish A, meantime, is looking to other places to see what they do so we can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you begin with what has God given us? What has God given us in terms of, the people? What has God given us in terms of our environment? Even as simple as where are we located in a community, right? I mean, before you even talk about, a worship space, where are we, right? Where are we? I mean, there was this church in Texas, yeah, and I won't name the church, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, they're out in the middle of nowhere, and so right off the bat, if I told you this church out in the middle of nowhere, you would be like thinking, well, I bet you that's hard to attract people. But they know who they are. They're an extremely vibrant community. And what have they been gifted with? They have been gifted with literally an architecture that can be seen from like almost a mile away. And
Wow.
as you are coming from the city, as it were, through nowhere, here they are, right? Jerusalem, the city on the hill. It's a pilgrimage. And like, if you don't somehow play upon even that, that imagery, I mean, you're missing a chance there, right? I mean, it was just great. It's just spectacular, when
Yeah.
you're driving up there. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're talking about. The analysis, the examination of who we are and what has God given us.
Yeah. And what you just said, I love that line. What has God given us, not them? Because you're right. Oftentimes ministry leaders will say, well, we need to look at these other parishes so that we can do what they're doing. You know, I'm okay looking at other parishes. It might inspire the
Sure.
things that God has given to you. But if you try to duplicate it, you're not working within, you're not working with the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
you're working within what you believe is good. But what God has given to us, and it makes me think about, the discernment of what we do have and really be grateful, like speak gratitude to that. What do we have? And then also the discernment of what do we need to discover more, to strengthen these areas, because I think that's what you're saying is we have been given, each parish has that identity within itself, and God's given the gifts. The Holy Spirit's waiting to, awaken these, um, to help, foster this great identity that the parish has, and
Yep.
for people to call it home, you know,
Absolutely.
home.
I mean, it makes me think it's a very American experience to um, take on debt to get that which we think that we need, right? So, American families buy houses maybe that they can't afford and they're in debt forever and they can barely make the mortgage, buy cars that they can't afford. But at the same time, I mean, I wonder, maybe none of our listeners are following this boat, but I've come across many parishes that have such a debt to build another building that
Mm,
they thought for sure they had to have, and they don't use it like they thought, and the debt is killing them, right?
mhm,
Um, because even the church that's totally isolated, so to speak, or not isolated, but their boundaries are filled by a neighborhood, right? So particularly like in the Northeast, you've got the church. I mean, they can't build anything because there's no more land, right? But what do you have? I mean, you have, let's say you have 600 families. You have 600 homes, right? I mean, what is the um, blueprint, of our parish? Is it just the building that's there in the neighborhood, or is it the building plus the 600 homes, right? What can you do there, right? What can you do in the nearby park or the nearby, whatever the case may be that you've not really utilized? You'll say, well, that's not ours. Do not misunderstand, right? God has provided an environment in which
Mm,
you can use, right?
mm, mm.
So it doesn't have to be the new building, the new nicer building. Particularly those that insist. Now, sometimes you have to do for space, a worship space, but just because the church is old doesn't mean you need a new one, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah. So here's what I'm thinking, Tracy. I think we've given the listeners or viewers these four um terms, architect, liturgy, people, ministries, to really think about in terms of identity. So I'm always trying to think about, maybe a pastor's listening, a leader's listening. Okay, you guys, you've given these four. Now, how do I start entering into a conversation with some of the leaders? And I know this is going to sound very practical, but if we took each one, architect, liturgy, I know we start with questions, but from your experience, what would you say, if someone wants to start really thinking about this with parish identity and these four things, what would be some of the things, sit around the table and do what, Tracy? What would be
yeah,
some
yeah.
practical things?
I mean, there's a lot of questions that can be asked, like, why are you here? Why did you choose this parish? What speaks to you here? Do you have your best friend, in this parish? Things like that. But you can also do exercises like, I mean, very simply, you could give everyone a piece of paper and you could say, I don't want words, but draw me a picture
Mm,
of what speaks to you at this parish. Okay?
yeah.
Maybe some people are going to draw a bunch of people. Maybe some people are going to draw that, you know, painting that's in the back of church of the church's patron. Maybe someone's going to draw the crucifix. Maybe someone's going to draw the tabernacle that's there. Maybe someone's going to draw something that's in an outside garden, right? And then you share those and you say, why? Why does this speak to you? Why do you identify our community with this?
Mm,
And, you know, then kind of come together and discuss what are some of the common denominators and what people are experiencing, right? And, we're talking about a little bit about branding.
mm-hmm.
That's a great exercise to begin, what is our brand, right? So my own home parish, the parish that I worked in for 22 years, we have, um, some people think it looks cool. Some people think it looks very bland, but we have a very large cross on our campus it used to be directly in front of the church. Now it's directly in front of the school, which is right next to the church, but it's right there on the main thoroughfare in the city. And you can't help but notice it as you drive by, right? So years ago, we made a decision. Okay, so this is going to be something that we're going to use to identify ourselves. And the cool thing is, for those who have been in the parish a long time, for decades, it's a very large cross, but it's been moved, I think, 3 times. Right.
Mm,
So every time you move it instead of get rid of it, you're making a decision to say, this is important. This is an
Mm,
important artifact of our community. And because you do that, it further speaks to the identity of people going there, right? So, um, so we use that, and those who are in our community and those who are outside of our community, if they see that on something, they immediately recognize, and hopefully they think of not that, but then they think of the good works or the charisms that we have brought into the community beyond our own parish, right?
mhm,
Hopefully, we are known then by our fruits as
mhm,
opposed to, oh yeah, the cross that's on the side of the road.
mhm,
And there's a story that I sometimes tell about giving a talk one day at a church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and um, there was one of the things I was going to talk about was identity and branding and things. And there was a car that moved directly in front of me. And I was about 7 miles away from the church. On the back of the car was a car magnet with the parish, uh, their logo and their name on it. And I mean, I kid you not, I said, you know what? Let's do an experiment. I turned off my GPS. So let's see what happens.
oh boy.
And lo and behold, that car went actually to the church. I mean, it could
Right
have gone
there.
somewhere else. Could have gone to Dunkin' Donuts.
Right,
Cool
right.
Dunkin' Donuts do. I don't know, okay.
Grocery store.
So I was like, this is a win-win experiment. It should be fine. Um, but they went right to the church. I thought, isn't that something?
Yeah.
Isn't that something that someone witnessing to who they belong, the community where they thrive, where they are part of something bigger than themselves, that on the back of their car led the way for me to
Hmm.
their community. I thought that that was extraordinary,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And for the people in that community, when they see that, it should bring about something in them. It should speak to those some aspect or all, hopefully, if it's the best brand, all four of those things that we've been talking about, right? It should
Yeah.
bring them into the experience. They should feel something. And we know how that works as human beings just outside of the church.
Yeah.
So, Darren, you're a sports fan?
Hockey.
Okay, so hockey season just started.
Yeah.
So, your team is
Bruins.
okay, the
I'm
Bruins.
from
All right.
New England, but I live in New Jersey, but Bruins.
An iconic logo for sure, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I was just last year giving a talk in Diocese of Buffalo. They're going through a lot of consolidations, so I was working with them. We were talking about, churches merging together to form a new entity, and how to then um, understand what that identity is and how to communicate something about that identity. And, we're talking about, different characteristics, charisms. We're talking about logos and things. And I kid you not, I mean, I didn't put it up there. It was as if God just intervened for me, but he didn't even have to because it was Buffalo. So in the church hall, on the bulletin board that was right next to me, with all the other church stuff that was on there, right in the middle was a Buffalo Bills logo.
Mm,
And, I said, take a look at that. Tell me about that.
hmm.
And it was so interesting because some people actually told stories about going to a game with their dad when they were young. Um, the Buffalo Bills mean an awful lot to the people of Buffalo. And suddenly reminiscing and, oh, just all of this stuff just came about. Why? Because of one picture
Hmm.
on a bulletin board.
Hmm.
If we had the ability to bring about that type of reflection and sense of belonging and sense of ownership with one image of our parish community, think about how cool that would be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be
Yeah.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
That would be something that people would want to, just wear on clothing and be able to say, hey, I belong here. Going out to dinner, I belong here. To go into the dentist's office, I belong here. On your car, I belong here.
Hmm.
Over and over and over again. And that's extraordinary. And there's some parishes do a great job of that. But there are so many others that could as well. And I think it is, a process of deep reflection, and it's a
Hmm.
process of being honest,
Hmm.
because if you create, or you put forth something that you're not, the people who are there, they know that that's not true. They know that didn't, you'll have very few people that say that speaks to me, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you'll know when you got it,
Yeah.
because people will say, oh,
Yeah.
that means something to me.
Yeah. What I love about this is, um, even, let's just say there's a pastor or leaders who haven't had this conversation. Just the encouragement of having the conversation and sharing the stories, is a great first start, right? To,
Absolutely.
to really just start sitting around the table and a pastor asking key leaders, tell me about your experience here.
Mhm.
Right, draw it out, whatever. Tell me about your experience. And now to hear one another sharing, really, hopefully, in a very vulnerable way, the significant impact that it has had. Because I think at some level, as leaders, we just take it for granted that someone's experiencing something, and therefore that's what it is. But when we really start to hear the stories, then we can really start to, and this is where you guys are experts in it, then we can start putting together. I'm not going to use the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to use the Boston Bruins logo. Then we can start putting together the logo, right? That when people see that, like your cross, they can say it really speaks to them about the impact, the how impactful the parish is for them, and share that with people.
Yeah.
That there's the brand isn't there just to identify it; it's to inspire, just like you experienced with the Buffalo Bills. It's to inspire. So, I, my point is, just starting that conversation could be very impactful for
Yes. Yeah.
some
So,
some
I mean,
leadership.
something at LPI that we do offer is we do offer branding and design. We work with a lot of parishes, even dioceses out there, to create imagery, and whether it be a logo or something else that speaks to their identity. And one of the very first steps in that process is a questionnaire. And it's a questionnaire that asks you all these various things about your community, right? And
Mhm.
and what are your strengths? What do people gravitate to? What would you say, the outside world thinks of your community, right? I mean, one of the most interesting questions is, what does everyone else that's non-Catholic think of your community? And a clear sign that a parish is not in touch with their identity and who they are is, if you were to ask people around in the community, what is this church? How do you know this church? They'd be like, I don't know that church. I don't know anything about them. I've never seen them, never heard anything, nothing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's a shame, right? From an evangelization point of view,
Yeah.
how can you be a church in a neighborhood, and those in the neighborhood know nothing about you? They've never seen anything about you, right?
Yeah.
Um, you need to be known by your fruits. And so, what are those fruits? And the fruits are like we've been talking about are not always the same. So one of the things that we help people do, communities do, is what uncover what those fruits are
Yeah.
and to really build upon them and say, hey, you know, we are ourselves a reflection of the body of Christ, but we are a particular reflection of the
Hmm.
body of Christ. We are not like um, every other reflection. This is our unique reflection. And this is who we are. I mean, think about how important that is for an ethnically diverse community and things like that, right?
Hmm.
There are some, gosh, there are some great Black Catholic parishes that I've worshipped in through the years, and um, you know, the identity there is oftentimes so strong, right? And it comes out in the hospitality, it comes out in obviously oftentimes the worship, it comes out in just the people, and it comes out in the ministries that they're involved in. And so oftentimes the non-Catholic community knows of that community because of
Hmm.
their actions.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
the other thing you're making me think about, and this can kind of help us move to the end of this conversation, which is that um questionnaire, that conversation. And I'm sure you guys hope that it's not one person answering that questionnaire, right? Like
right, right.
it's not the pastor filling it out, it's the pastor sitting with some key people and saying, hey, let's really paint a picture, answer these questions, collaboratively. That experience, that process can then start to trickle down into the different ministries, and
Absolutely.
how they're starting to think about their ministry at the parish, because oftentimes, just like when you said outside of the community, people don't know. Even inside the community, oftentimes people don't know the ministries that are there,
Absolutely.
because they've gotten to be kind of silenced by the monotony of what it is. It's the men's ministry,
Right.
it's the women's, it's the monotony, and pretty soon you don't hear it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, as you are well aware, in probably in many circles, I'm known more as kind of like the everyday stewardship guy.
Yes.
And so,
And
um,
your PowerPoints were just so awesome back in the day. they,
thanks.
they were just
Uh,
great. Like,
and
how does
from
he do that?
yeah, from a stewardship point of view, um, you know, as individuals and then as communities, we're called to give that which we have been given, right? I
Mm,
mean, we give back to God through the process of not only just sharing with Him, but to share with those He has created. So when we give that which has been given to us to the community at large, we are being good stewards.
hmm.
The difficulty is when we're a community and we don't have a clear picture of what it is that we have to give. It's an easy thing to say, let's take up another collection for this. It's an
Hmm.
easy thing to say, let's bring tuna. Everyone bring a can of tuna next week. That's easy, but that's not a characteristic. That's just being that's just being good people, right? You
Hmm.
don't need to know Jesus Christ to give someone a can of tuna or to give someone $5. You don't. You
Yeah.
just be a good person.
Yeah.
But what is it to be a community founded on Christ that sets you apart and gives what has been given to you to multiply and to give out to the world? What is that?
Hmm.
And sometimes it may be as simple as a place of refuge, right? It
Hmm.
may be, I mean, I've known parishes that have done an awful lot in terms of like, during winter months and sometimes in the summer months in the very hot states. um, providing, their church hall for homeless people and things like that. If you have been given the gift of space, and you've been given the gift of people that are drawn to that and want to help out with that, if you have many workers to make the work light, you do that enough, you, I guarantee those in the surrounding community will know who you are, right?
Yeah.
They'll know.
Yeah.
And so you'll be known by the fruits.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so what does that lead to in a brand, right? I mean, maybe it leads to, a picture of a hand on top of a head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it leads to two hands together that were in this together. Maybe it leads to a picture of a Christ or the patron embracing, just another person, whatever the case may be. I don't know, I'm just thinking off the
Yeah.
top of my head, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Well, you have certainly inspired me with many thoughts, but I want to just end by asking you, what 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 would you encourage listeners or viewers as a next step, a simple next step? What would you encourage somebody right now um, to do after hearing all this? In my mind, I know what I want to do at the next parish that I'm working with, but
Yeah.
what would you do? What would you encourage?
Well, seeing that most of our listeners are going to be, leaders within parishes and things, I mean, I would suggest that they not necessarily begin with the community, but each person that's listening begin with themselves
Mm,
and reflect on, why am I here?
hmm
What speaks to me? What is important? What is it? What are the aspects in this community that if they disappeared tomorrow, I would I would feel less than?
mm,
Because there's so many of us that I think, particularly when we're working in a parish community, like you said before, take things for granted. I mean, we go to mass and we no longer are paying attention to whether it be iconography or the stations on the wall or things like that. We don't pay attention. We are paying maybe attention at mass to the Eucharistic liturgy, but then afterwards we don't pay attention to the tabernacle. I bet there's some of us like, hey, draw a picture of this, whatever it is that's in the church. You're like, I'm not sure I can because I haven't really paid much attention recently, you
mm,
know, and just become connected with that speaks to you, because then you'll be able to take that to a group of leaders or to the community, and you can then do the exercise that we talked about, but you can then also say, let me share with you, you know, the exercise that I've already done. Let me share with you, it speaks to me,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And I guarantee, even without, you know, moving to a brand or things like that, each person that does that exercise, they'll be they'll be more nourished in their community. They'll feel more at peace, and they will oftentimes experience, Christ in just a slightly more profound way, right? Because
mhm,
they're in touch with their surroundings. It's the first characteristic of an everyday steward, Darian, which is to be mindful of our surroundings and what we're encountering. So
yeah, yeah. That's such a great suggestion, Tracy. Thank you so much for being here. And what I want to do is encourage people, go to LPI's website. It's 4lpi.com.
yep, and number four.
Yep, the number four. The link will be in the description below. If you want to connect with Tracy and the company, I'll have that down in the description below as well. And gosh, thank you so much, Tracy, for a great conversation, an encouraging conversation. And I really appreciate your time being here and sharing this with us.
Anytime, Darren. It was a lot of fun. It was great to see you again.
Yeah, great. All right, everyone. Thanks again, and we'll see you at the next episode. Take care and God bless.
God bless.
All right.